I am developing a real UAV and it needs some good aerodynamics. Designing in SolidWorks and testing in professional softwares takes a lot of time. So is this game FlyOut a good alternative? Let's find that out. I am trying to develop a cheaper alternative to advanced UAVs so that they can be used in drone swarms and do crazy things like quick and cheap search and rescue missions, clearing minefields, or military purposes. I have no experience engineering anything, so in this series I'm giving you a realistic look on engineering a UAV and starting a company without any experience. Welcome to week 2. This week we are going further into the aerodynamics of this drone. Here's a very quick recap of week 1. I figured out which airfoil I should use. I went over the different drone designs and picked this one. I did some research on which electronics I should be using, and I handed all of this over to my friend Jordy, who is currently designing the drone in SolidWorks, which looks like this right now. Today we will be finding out if this game is a cheap alternative to testing aerodynamics, if it will save time compared to professional programs, and how accurate it really is. Alright, it's time to start my very first investment ever in this company drone idea. This is a very official moment. Alright, I'm paying right now. I think I paid. Oh, I didn't pay just yet. Let's make a new aircraft. I saw a lot of reviews of people on Steam that said that they took 2 days at least to learn it because apparently it's quite complex. Now it didn't take that long. I ended up only needing 2 hours before I started working on my actual project. The only issue with this game is that if you ever want to use this as well, be aware there's no Ctrl-Z, and that's really annoying. And it's a little bit buggy because it's in beta. So you guys kind of understand what I'm doing here. I was trying to rebuild my actual drone already, the one from the intro of this video. And this is what it's currently looking like. So that should tell you how terrible I was at this stage, but trust me, it'll get a lot better. It was actually starting to look a lot more like the drone than it did before. So to be honest, without a tutorial, that's still quite impressive to me. So let's go ahead and test it out, save it first. And then it said, oh, you didn't connect an item. I was like, no, it's fine. And I was ready and oh my god, look at this. Look at this, I just got Jimmy. And then the plane was gone and I was like, oh my god, what do I do? And then I clicked save. So I did everything for no reason. I just ate dinner. Right now I'm gonna continue with the game. I'm just gonna watch a few tutorials so I'm sure that I know all the features, because I can start learning by myself, but I found that you're not gonna find every feature and it might take you a long time before you figure out features that save you a lot of time. So I'm just gonna follow a tutorial so I know everything, and then I'm gonna try and design my first airplane. I don't know which one it's gonna be yet. Well, it was gonna be my own plane, my own drone, my own idea. I kind of wanted to practice with something else, but I was too excited and the tutorial was quite boring, so I just started doing stuff myself, to be honest. The very annoying thing I did find is that this cockpit here with the guy is really in the way of making my drone a bit smaller, so I cannot really test it out on a smaller scale, which changes aerodynamics slightly. You cannot just scale down a plane that works at a specific size because of the Reynolds number. It's a bit complex to explain right now, but it will not behave the same if you scale down a passenger airplane, because first of all, the jet engine will not even work. Although the wings would probably still be good, but that's all very complex and I'm still not good enough to teach anything. I was really zoning out most of the time. You can see me skipping back on the tutorial. It's just because they're too boring. It's quite simple. This game is really quite simple. It's not that complex than what they said. Maybe it is to some people, but especially if you have some experience with 3D programs at all, or if you understand the way it works, then it's really not too hard. It's a great entry to doing stuff like that, not gonna lie. But then it got time to finally start building my thing and using everything I learned in the tutorial. So I figured out that you can add a blueprint to the game. So just like in Blender, you can use it as a reference image. So I figured that out and I wanted to try and make the airfoil first. So I made a huge blueprint. The main issue in this game is that there's only this default airfoil. So I just decided to make the closest thing to the airfoil I wanted. At this point, I figured out that Ctrl-Z doesn't work and I was really annoyed. And making it very similar to this airfoil is pretty hard as well. Here I once again only did one side of the wing, so I had to do it all again. That's the really annoying part without Ctrl-Z. But you do get used to it, you get a bit more careful later on. But this is about the closest thing I can do to this airfoil, not gonna lie. So I just saved this airfoil and then I was gonna continue with the main plane. So I imported the blueprint that I made last week with the estimation of all the measurements. I made this to send to my friend Jordy, but he didn't end up using any of that. So yeah. So this would be the real size. That black bar right there would be the real size I want it to be. But then I figured out there's no way to get rid of the cockpit, so I was a bit annoyed. So I was gonna make it this big, and at this point I didn't really figure out just yet how big of an impact the size would be. And I still don't know specifically how bad it is, but please let me know if you know. So this is officially the first part of the drone. So I decided to make a carbon fiber real quick and get going. I made sure that the cockpit was connected to the body, to the fuselage this time, so the entire plane wouldn't be gone when I test fly it. There were a lot of hiccups, and I'm not gonna go over every single one because I just really had to find my way into designing this. I only watched like 10 minutes of a tutorial and that's it. But this shape is already miles better than my first attempt. I had a little like reference image of the real thing on the other screen, so that's pretty nice. So, whilst watching this amazing time lapse, I want to tell you about the other huge amount of progress I have made alongside this. And this was mostly possible by two amazing guys that reached out to me. Last video I asked people with experience to send me an email if they would like to help out, and of those 400 viewers I did get, 2 people reached out. One of the guys is an Australian guy called Josh, and he was fascinated with UAVs as well, and because of this he gathered a ton of knowledge on this field and he generally knows a lot. He also has access to a few tools like 3D printers, and he has some experience using a CAD program. The other guy is from India. He is on an engineering college and they have an RC plane club, and he's like the leader of that club. Together they've designed an RC plane and it looks pretty advanced. This guy has a very deep understanding on aircraft aerodynamics and physics. He also has 5 months of SolidWorks experience, and the combination of these two guys helping me out saved me so much time and allowed us to make so much more progress with developing this drone. I will not keep you waiting though, so here's what we did. First, I introduced them to the project and showed them what I had already. The Indian guy recommended the Australian guy a professional wind tunnel program that he then downloaded. And I told him I landed on the Clark Y airfoil in the last video. Make sure to check out that video if you want to see more in-depth information about how I got to that airfoil. And he put it inside of that wind tunnel program. Now, to me, these graphs are a little bit complex, but I think red is faster wind and blue is slow wind or drag. So this is the airfoil at an angle of attack of 0 degrees. The wind tunnel was flowing at 20 knots, which is 37 kilometers an hour, and for the Americans that's I don't know, 3 yards. So the results weren't so great. 1.8 Newton of upwards force and 1.49 Newton of force in the x-axis, and I think that's drag, but I'm not entirely sure. Wait, let me ask him. Okay, yeah, it's probably drag. So then he changed the angle of attack to 7.5 degrees, and he already figured out the Clark Y airfoil needs a pretty high angle of attack, and that was confirmed right away, as that performed about 5 times better with 8.9 newtons of lift and the same or slightly less drag. The airfoil he simulated was 1 meter long with a chord of 200. So then, kind of as a proof of concept, he printed out a sample of a 100mm chord and a 250mm span and tested it in a wind tunnel, but it's kind of a makeshift wind tunnel. He just took a blow dryer and attached a string to it, and then he put the wing in front of that, and you can see the string really going down. And it's really cool to me that you can really see the force that is created by an airfoil. This way he was easily able to test out like a good angle of attacks, so that's honestly amazing. So I had to figure out what the wing size should be of the plane, so I basically did some research on aspect ratios. I found this PDF of a glider plane, and it said that the wing should be 35 to 25% longer than the fuselage is. So I calculated what that would be in size, and also the depth of the wing had to be the same width of the fuselage, which is 2 meters, because the fuselage is quite large. I think it was 19 meters or no, something like that. So after adding all of those measurements, I started adding a motor, and luckily they have a electric motor in this game, which is quite nice, and you can like set the RPM and the torque, and also different like blade types, and I don't know which one does what exactly. I still need to do research on stuff like that, but I just chose a random one. Now to make the rudder real quick. I did the rest of the entire plane basically by guessing, by the way. I didn't like use any measurements for the rudder. I did use that blueprint with the estimated measurements, but it ended up looking way too big compared to the real thing. So later on I just made it smaller, as you can see. Same for the front wing. I just had no idea how long it should be, so I just did something. So I added a few control panels, and I also just guessed it. I'm pretty sure that control panels are like pretty precisely placed, and I didn't do that. So then I saved it, and it was time to start for the first time in game. Oh, I don't have landing gear. I'm stupid. There we go. The first flight. Well, not flight, because we didn't move at all. I didn't know why. I didn't understand this yet, but I thought the motor just didn't do enough. Changed the motor up a bit for like more RPM or torque. Made the entire motor bigger. And then it still didn't work, and I realized it said a no gearbox, because you can like click on each part of the plane and see their properties. And I saw no gearbox, so I thought, let's add one. And as you can see right now, this was the first time that the plane actually drove. Now, it did constantly drive to the right. So that was a big thing, and I had no idea why. So I thought, let's allow some more air, because I was really going slow. I was going about 12 kilometers an hour max. So I thought maybe it's the airflow. Looking back at it, I don't know how this really increased the airflow at all. Kind of seems like more drag to me, but I'm not sure. I also made the motor a bit stronger, and then I was able to fly a bit faster. And I also noticed that the rudder was gone. I don't know why. So I added a rudder real quick. I looked up what like airfoil a rudder should have. Apparently it's just a fish shape, but we will like test that out way better in the future. So I did a quick paint job and then tested it again. It still doesn't take off, but it steers right constantly. The max speed was 43 there. I didn't get why it kept like steering right, so I thought maybe that's something to do with the control surfaces. I don't know. It didn't help. Then I worked on the center of gravity, and I put it more to the back without really knowing why. Changed some more motor settings, but I still couldn't take off. Then I had enough, and I just started doing research, the good old boring research. I looked at the way other planes work with the main wing at the back. I figured out that it's not even that optimal to have it like that. Later on in this video, I will be changing this design, actually with an educated person helping me out. So yeah, keep watching for that. So I changed the control surfaces a little bit, and then for some reason I decided to bring the center of mass to the front, even though it should have went more to the back, but I didn't find that out until now. I bet this is very frustrating for people that know what they're doing. Just mind, I have only 1 week of experience. I'm just figuring everything out. I didn't even research this. I guess it makes sense that I'm not good at it just yet. I cannot expect that. So, more batteries at the front. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? And then I tried to like center everything out, because I thought the center of mass was the thing steering the plane to the right. That was not the case, but that's the best thing that I could come up with, to be honest. And I did find that the center of mass was slightly to the right, and I made slight changes until it was perfectly in the middle. A long time later, I was finally done centering it out. So, time to test out my new idea. And go, come on. All that effort? Come on, you got it? No? You don't? Okay. It didn't work. What a surprise. I had to make some bigger changes. As you can see, it does go a lot faster than it used to. We're hitting like 200 kilometers an hour, so I thought this should definitely be able to take off at that point, but it didn't. Then I wanted to make sure everything was perfectly centered, and I moved the entire drone to be perfectly centered because it wasn't. It was slightly off. So I did that, and then it still didn't fly. Kept drifting to the right, and it was very uncontrollable. I constantly had to like steer and do stuff. Look how far I drove this time. I don't know what I was thinking. I was like, come on, you got this, bro. You got it. No, it didn't get it. So I changed the angle of attack slightly by just rotating the entire wing, because I recalled a tutorial saying that the default wing needs quite a large angle of attack to be able to fly. And as you can see, this is the closest thing I did come to flying. I'm very happy that I'm not doing this in real life. So let's try that again real quick. Am I gonna fly? No, for some reason it went up by the back. I felt like we were getting close though. This is the addictive part about this game. It's like, we're almost there, I gotta keep going. And as a noob, it felt like a puzzle. And nope. And nope. 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 I'm not proud of this. Every single time that I crash, I have to change something for the next test and it still crashes. So I added some more angle of attack right here, and then I finally got the point of center of mass. And I made sure that the center of mass would finally kind of align with the center of lift. The center of lift, I think that's the name. And that was a good idea because this was a very exciting moment. I was like, come on, you got this, you got this. And I'm happy looking at this. Look, it was so close, I had to steer a lot, it was super unstable, but I almost had it, and there we go, the first ever lift off of my drone design. I didn't study engineering, I didn't study aerodynamics, I just played a game. And with 1 week of experience, I was very happy that I was able to do this. Now, do mind that we already watched that like 5 hours of content and I crashed right after taking off. Let's just ignore that. But that was so cool. I was super happy with that. Here's the second run, the second ever takeoff. Now, I really did not know why it kept going to the right. As you can see right here, I could not go to the left. I tried to straighten it out. I was just trying to not make it go too much right that it would stall. But that was pretty hard, as you can see. I was trying to go left here. This is the best I could do. So this was a bit of a longer flight already, but it was just not good. I was like, this is not the good product. So I had to ask the guys that are helping me out, and they said, and I can't believe I didn't think of this before. You probably at home already thought of this, but it was because of the torque on the motor. You see, the propeller is turning left, so to be able to go left, it needs to like put force towards the right on the body of the plane, assuming that the plane is stable enough to stop that force from turning the plane. And that was not the case. Either because the motor was very strong or because my plane is not very good. Now, this can either be countered by adding another wing that goes counterclockwise, or it can be countered by simply using less torque and more RPM. So thanks to the guys for telling me that. I don't know how long it would take for me to figure that out. Currently, I'm doing the voiceover, and it's like Saturday while I was doing the voiceover. And I'm very happy with how far I got this week. Looking back at how I started, I made so much progress. Honestly, it's unbelievable. Having people help me out is very, very nice. We have to talk about the motor placement. Josh made a CAD drawing of a very simple concept to cover the VTOL motors in the wing. I like this idea and I thought of how cool it would be to have zero aerodynamic impact for the horizontal flight, even though it's a VTOL. But there was one problem. With the dimensions we currently have, I very highly doubt that the motors would fit inside of the wing, mostly because of the thickness of the motor compared to the wing. This genuinely bugged me as I couldn't sleep until 6 AM that night and I kept trying to figure out solutions to counter this. And I came up with a solution that accidentally also had a bunch of other benefits, and at this point I felt like a genius. But the idea is quite hard to explain. So the next day I woke up at like 2 PM and started right away drawing a plan and making it in Blender. So here's my idea. Like regular, we add the propeller in the wing, but not the motors. The prop will be attached to a belt that is driven by this gear that is turned by this small drive shaft connected to a motor inside of the body. This is the least interesting part. It gets better, but just know that I made this model very unreliable and stupid, but it is more about the concept of this. So after adding that to the rear of the drone as well, you can add a system that allows the two rear motors to switch and drive a gearbox. Or you can do it with all 4 motors. Now I hear you thinking, combining the motors will only give more torque. And wasn't that exactly your issue? Yes and yes. So with this fairly compact gearbox, it turns the torque into more RPM instead, and if you can do this with all 4 drone motors, you literally have enough power to explode the plane. Maybe. So technically that allows you to run all the motors at 20% instead of full throttle. And if we look at the energy efficiency compared to the throttle, you see that the engine is most efficient within the first 20%. More efficient by like 80 to 90%, I would say, I'm not sure. So in my head, that makes the horizontal flight 80% more efficient. That's crazy. Alongside that, you save cost on a 5th motor. You use the VTOL motors all of the time, because I mean you paid for them, might as well use them. You have an aerodynamic wing, and it has an extreme amount of engine power if you need it, which could add to the whole modularity plan of making the plane modular. We could just develop wings and props that are perfect for going faster, people can just put it on there and you have enough power already to go very fast. I showed this to the boys and they pointed out some fair issues though, and I agree on them. First of all, a motor is more efficient at 20% because it generates less heat. Now, what happens if you put drone motors in an enclosed location right next to one another? You obviously get heat. I kind of thought of this and I added an air intake, but that's still not the amount of cooling that you would get with external motors. So you can cool the motors of course, but that makes it slightly complex, and at that point you may as well get a separate motor and cool that one off. But this is all theoretical. We need to test out some stuff first, so we decided not to do it just yet and keep it in mind for the future or like a future model. But if you have a more simplified way, or if you think this can be pulled off with your help, please send me an email, and this counts for other types of help as well. I would greatly appreciate it, so my email is in the description. So we decided to add the motors to the outside of the drone instead, as the Indian guy thought that this wouldn't generate too much drag to still have lift, but he also said that we need to test it out in some simulations. He then very nicely drew some stuff out on paper to explain some concepts to me, and he thought the current drone design would be way better if we made the front wing the same size as the rear wing. This turned out to be a very good yet simple piece of advice, and I feel stupid for not considering it before, so I went back in the game FlyOut to test it out. Alright, let's go ahead and do it. So I just put the rear wings on the front, time to test it out. Okay, I did the control surfaces wrong and I don't expect it to take off just yet, but let's give it a try anyways. Yeah, no, that didn't work. Let's see what we can do. Alright, so I kind of lined up the center of mass and stuff. At this point, I was still a bit stupid with that. By the way, that was my fault, not the Indian guy that recommended the wings. And I think people that know how planes work are like, you're stupid. But now at least I understand what I have to do instead. So, for example, taking twice the runway. Or if the runway doesn't work, we always have another solution. A hill. It's precisely placed about 5 times the runway further away for people that cannot take off like me. So let's see if we can do that then. No. So I had enough and I decided to just make the plane smaller because it was still way too big and it could be a bit more to scale. As you can see, this is too small, but yeah, that don't work. Okay, let's make it a proper size. That seems to work. The head will stick out, but that's fine, I guess. I hope it doesn't have too much of an impact. So I tried to kind of line up the center of mass and the center of gravity, but on this smaller model, my motor was not strong enough at all. So I did find out that you can just take off from a height, so don't get excited. I didn't take off, I just fell. And then it's pretty stable, I'm not gonna lie. It keeps going down, that's an issue, but that's my issue. It's the center of gravity, and I didn't figure that out yet. Now, on my defense, the landing gear was gone, and the front landing gear was still on there. I don't know how that happened. So this time I did fly for like 4 minutes while calling with my friend Jordy, and we decided to see if we can fix this issue. So I did try to line up the center of gravity, but I kind of made it worse, I don't know why. But the thing is that the game is a bit buggy with the center of mass and the center of gravity, because you might like change it and it'll be perfect, and then you'll fly and then you go back to the editor and then you see that it's not perfect, so it's not always precise. So I didn't know that it was about the center of gravity, so I was just trying out wing locations and making turns and all of that. So I also tried stuff like this. Well, Jordy told me to do this, okay? I blame this on him. I didn't think this would work. Had to do it because of a friend. Yeah, so then I decided to make 3 wings, and that worked better than I expected. You can tell that this was my idea. Alright, so then it was finally time to just perfectly match up the center of gravity and the center of lift. Finally, I understood it. This was really the breaking point where I really understood it. I probably said that already, but yeah. So let's test it out. How well is this gonna fly? Okay. So I gotta get up to speed real quick before we can truly see it. Damn, look how stable this is. I was so happy when this happened. It was, you know, it seems like 25 minutes to you guys, but at this point, we're on 12 hours of footage in this game. I have been editing this video the past weekend full time. I've been working on this like 16 hours probably. I am so done with this right now, but it flies and I was very happy with that. Later on I did make some calculations and I figured out that it has like a 1:5 glide ratio. I think it's terrible at least because I heard RC planes often have something like this. But for example, a Boeing has a 1:20 glide ratio and a glider has a 1:70 glide ratio, which is quite crazy. So I do want to just improve this in the future. But whilst editing this video, I was like, damn, I didn't get a version flying with landing gear. I didn't take off. So I decided to do that real quick. Well, it wasn't very quick. All right, let's try and take off. This was the first attempt. Obviously, this usually goes wrong. It was hard to like get up to speed. I took a whole runway. So as you can see, I took more than 1 runway. But then I got up. I had this issue that I couldn't go down. Because I guess I was past the point of generating lift, so then you kind of have no control. That's what I assume. So then I flew it again, but this time I didn't crash right away. And I still kind of had that problem, but I just had to make sure I don't like go up too much. And then it flew pretty well, I'm not gonna lie. The issue is that I cannot really fly upwards, like I cannot gain altitude without losing speed. So I figured out that it must be the weight of the plane that stops me from doing that. So I did some things to reduce the weight a bit, and I shaved off about 1 ton. I fixed the center of gravity and mass real quick. I shaved off this weight by like using a less thick body and all of that. And then I was ready to test it out. There we go. That was a perfect takeoff. And as you can see, I don't got any issues. I can fly way faster now, and it just works. So I still have a few issues with this design. It's not the best to control. I'm going to thoroughly test it out, and then next week I might be able to make some changes and get like a perfect version, and then we're going to continue developing this drone and build it in real life. See you next week.